Um, so for those who were here last Thursday, as you know, we had some discrepancies in the numbers.
Right.
And so for the last couple of days, Ed, me and others have gone through the numbers and rectified that. But before we get to that, I want to share one thing. So I don't know if it was last Thursday or if it was week before that, but Dave had made a motion to, hey, we need to get the numbers in advance so that we can review them. I was one of the ones to push back on that. Given what happened recently, I think that was a mistake. And so I'm talking to Ed and the select board. We are going to actually make sure that all the financial information is available 24 hours in advance. And that will go through some review by me and Ed before it comes to you. So that situation's like last Thursday, don't repeat. And so obviously that didn't happen today, right? Because time was kind of short, so you may still see some movement in the numbers. But the plan is for future meetings, even though we're at the end of the budget season, but then especially next year, we're gonna probably move up the budget calendar because we now have an earlier meetings with SB2. We're probably gonna make sure the finances are more earlier available so people have time to review them and streamline things. So my apologies for pushing back. Thanks for making the pointed thing out, and we're gonna get it fixed. Do you want to add anything? Okay. So the numbers. So I'm gonna share. Trying to make this as big as I can, but actually make sure you can still see. So there were minor changes to the budget. I don't remember all the details. I don't know if Ed, if you want to go through those. I believe it came down by a few $1,000. On the general fund. Actually, do I have that? So the rec personnel came down a little bit. This is on this sheet of paper by like a few $1,000s. You will also see a shift in the water and sewer health insurance. So that was a miss and that was corrected. So the water and sewer funds that you see here are a little bit lower by. Essentially what happened was the health insurance cost was reduced in the general fund, but forgot to reduce it in the water and sewer fund. Advanced transit looks like it went down. That was also an oversight. So you may remember from early in the budget season, because we hadn't had the discussion yet about regional services, that all the money was held in one line item. And that distribution wasn't put in yet. So what essentially happened is the numbers were updated so that each line item matched what was in the regional services agreement. And so that's what is causing the minor movements.
There was also a
And then
$10,000 reduction in
in
paving.
pavement,
And I can fill the budget committee in that I was going back and forth between aggregate and paving. I ended up taking it out of the paving line. You know, if they get there and they need a little more in paving and they can reduce aggregate, they can move that back and forth a little bit. And then I reduced $880, not much, out of the meeting and hearings records. There is an increase from the online minute taker that we have, but we're trying to do a little bit more with some of the AI minutes and things. I don't know how much will come out of the select board there, but we may be able to do some of that and reduce that. So I just pulled a little bit out of there, trying to nickel and dime everywhere I can see we can pull a little bit.
So, so at the end of the day, the general fund increases 1.45% or $113,000. Okay. And then we're gonna go through this whole spreadsheet and then we're gonna have some additional discussion items. And essentially go back to the top, but to see where we are first.
Want to go through revenue changes real fast?
I was gonna focus on the expense numbers and go down to the revenue numbers and then just keep
Perfect.
working on the spreadsheet. So these numbers are straight from state forms. So you're gonna probably see here at the bottom, oh my God, hey, why are we going down 24%? So the reason is, and we're gonna talk to a financial person to see how we best deal with this in the future. But like, if you look on the state form, when you're bringing money from a loan, that is on the line item as money's coming in. Right? So like, for example, if you have a $500,000 project and you're gonna finish it in 2026, and you're gonna get a loan in 2026, $100,000,
Okay.
then you don't have to collect taxes for that because the expense is covered by a loan. So in the state form, I think I may be simplifying a little bit, but in the state form, you're gonna see they're including all the expenses and the expenses, and they're including all the monies coming in the revenue to then calculate what your tax rate is. So what you're gonna see here is the water fund didn't magically go from $3 million in expenses to 300,000. The reason is the 2025 adopted has the $2.75 million loan thing. Right? So to help people understand it, but probably incorrect, what we sometimes had done in the past, and again, we're going to talk to a finance person about it, we had done things like this. We had subtracted the $2.75 million out of it so that people had an apples to apples comparison to say, hey, the normal expenses in the water fund are going up. However, when you do that, it now messes with all the numbers below.
What was the last part you said?
If you take out the loan on the expenses, you're messing with the numbers down below because there's a loan somewhere in revenue you now have to take out too. And then it gets really messy with, well, what about a smaller loan? What about this? What about that? So I think,
Bigger one.
yes, leave it alone. And we explain, hey, the reason why it went down a lot is because we had a loan for water fund last year. We don't have it this year. If you take the loan out, and that will go in the narrative, the increase is 1.37% or whatever number was there a minute ago. Makes sense. So our general, it's not like, oh, the town is making this massive service change and we're going to go down 24% in what we spent. No, makes sense. And so in the public hearing and in the deliberative session, I will present this in a way that it makes it very clear. A, all these numbers are traceable to these state forms, and these are the numbers from the forms. But by the way, here's what it means. Makes sense? So one of the reasons is, and as you probably saw, so here's CIP, right? That includes the proposed increase, not just of the, what was it normally, 25 and change, but
yeah, right. in that
Right.
area.
and so this has the proposed increase that's larger, which I want to talk about. It has the using monies from the unspent labor in the police department to put it into the police recruitment thing. And you're going to see here, it's an expense, but it's going to come back down at the bottom as well. Right? So those are all the things we're going to spend, right? Then this is revenues coming in. So this is where we had a big discussion last time, but numbers were not adding up. So these numbers were updated to reflect actuals. And then also here is this $100,000 loan that we talked about last time. And so money's coming in last year. You're going to be like, oh my God, $6.9 million came in. Well, it includes the $2.75 million loan. Right? And so it's again looks really crazy, like, oh my God, our revenues are going down 47%. Like, yeah, but it includes a $2.75 million loan. And so that's why I want people to focus on this line item, because those are the revenues without the loans. right? So that's really what impacts your tax rate, because these numbers are matching the numbers up above, except for these. So we are projecting a decrease in revenue of 7%.
Dimitri, we might have talked about this once before, but why have the licenses, permits and fees gone down by $98,000?
Right, so $52,000 of the reduction in licenses, permits, and fees is the cable access channel. That the select board said, hey, we shouldn't be collecting franchise fees from people for services we don't actually really offer, right? So that's that. That's half of it. The other, what was the rest? I know we
I'd have
talked
to
about.
look, we adjusted.
So here, hold on,
This
I have
one
it.
should have it in there. The
It's
one
in-
that I gave you had the yellow highlighting. Yes. But I have revenue for it.
Okay, so. So this was the big one, 52. So we have a small reduction in marriage licenses. There's got to be another licensing services and fees. Oh,
All registrations down.
so hold on. Yes, so that's the actual that went to the state to save taxes. Okay, so I try not to confuse people more. So last year, we had budgeted $2.378 million. So sorry, 1.238. So last year, we projected a revenue for licenses, and fees of, call it 1.24 million. Okay. What we used for the state calculation based on taxes, based on estimated where we're going to end up at the year, we're at 1.3. Okay. So we overperformed on that line item for collecting taxes. Right?
Okay.
That makes sense. So we overperformed by about $50,000. Makes
A
sense.
little bit, and we're also. I'm projecting right now, we're at 165. We're watching those motor vehicle permits through this month. But in the estimated revenues we gave back in September, we estimated we were gonna hit 1.229. If we don't hit that, our budget number needs to be a little lower because we're probably not gonna hit it next year either. If we do get there, we may be able to trickle that revenue up over the next, not very long, next month or so as we get our final numbers at the end of the month.
So here, to another step back. So last year, and I'll probably include this in the presentation as well, I forecasted, and I'm going off memory, so please don't quote the exact number, but I forecasted we were going to be having taxes collected of 6.2 and change per million, right? That's what I projected, right? The actual taxes collected were less because we had more revenue. Makes sense? Which everybody should be happy about because that means the actual taxes collected were low, right? So you could say, hey, you're collecting more revenue than you planned. You should also budget for more collecting more revenue. You could say that, right? But you can see your reaction. So you're playing a little game with what are you budgeting your revenue to be to predict your taxes, and then what is the actual going to be? Ideally, you want those to be close, right? You don't want to project a revenue that's really low and then freak people out about the taxes. You also don't want to project the revenue to be really high to make everybody feel good about the taxes until they get the bill and they see that it's much higher. It's really hard to forecast, right? So, for example, a $50,000 up or down in your projected revenues is gonna move your increase from year to year by 10%. Right? So the question is, what do you project? And this is the town's best projection of what it will be. Now, granted, this number here is projected for 2026 is higher than the projected that we had last year in this meeting a year ago, despite the $52,000 loss in revenue from cable access, even though it's lower than what we actually think we're going to get in 2025. I know this sounds very common.
You simplified it very well.
Well, and
Right,
on
so,
motor permit fees, like I said, we projected in September based off of what we had collected to then. That we
Right.
would hit 229,000. And as of last month, I don't know where we're sitting today, we were closer to the 165 mark, so that's a $64,000 difference.
Mhm.
Like I said, if we come in, I'm just gonna use the number at 180, we can adjust that at the last minute up to 180 before we go to the budget hearing and stuff and pull those numbers closer. I don't
But-
think we're gonna hit the
Right,
229.
so my point really is that we're projecting general fund to increase by about 1.5. We're also projecting revenues to go down by 7. Right, so unless somebody knows a way to get more revenue, their taxes are gonna go up more than 1.5.
So we haven't adjusted the vehicle registration fees based on the increases that happened on January 1st. The state is raising all the registration fees for vehicles.
I need to look at that and see how that affects ours. I can double check that.
It'll go into the state.
So
Most of it's going.
Yeah. I understood what you said, but I want to clarify one thing. You said every $50,000 delta
Right, so,
results in 10%.
right, hold on.
Okay. So you
10%. Yeah, okay. You have to be careful with percentages, but I'll explain. So essentially, the money's collected. Here, I'm gonna do the same thing like I did last week. So this is how much more we're gonna spend, right? 113. Agree? We also agree that water, sewer, TIF, all that has no direct impact on the tax rate because they're enrolled funds, right? This is how much more we're planning to spend on CIP, right? This is how much less revenue we're gonna get. Agree?
Yes.
Right?
So
We're
Projection.
projection, right? If we outperform and this is less, well, that means less taxes to be collected, as was the case last year. And probably if you look back the year before that and year before that and year before that, right? We tend to underestimate because
It's safer.
it's safer.
yeah, so let me challenge that for a second.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, finish that option.
So, because there's one item. The other one where we have less revenue is because we had a loan to offset costs that are at the top. And that loan was completely forgiven, which is great. We don't have to pay debt on it in the future, but it's still a loan. It's money that came in. So we also have this much money that is not coming in. Right? Okay. Yeah. So say you have to balance say you have to have the cash in your checking account at the end of every year has to be 0. Okay? End of every year, the cash in your checking account is 0.
Not hard.
You're gonna go buy a house. That's an expense, right?
You get it.
Well, I got what you're saying.
Okay.
Don't look at me. I got what
All
you're
right.
saying. It's just- I think it's dumb that they make you put the loan in there and then take it back out. It
I
confuses
know.
everybody.
Okay, so, but I'm gonna continue. See, you're gonna buy a house. Well, you're gonna get a mortgage from the bank for the house. You still spent the money.
Mhm.
It's just that it's not like the bank is paying the house for you. The bank is giving you the money so you can go buy the house. And that's why the loan is in the revenue. It's money coming into the checking account and then immediately leaving because you spend it, but it's money that's coming in. The only benefit you have on this particular $100,000 is that you don't have to pay debt on it in the future because it became one of those loans that they then forgive the whole principal on, right? Essentially a grant. If that loan had been a standard loan, the only difference would have been we would have to have principal and interest on all the future years to pay on it. But in that year that you're gonna take the loan out and spend the money, it is still money coming in and leaving. Now, that loan that you were given, that essentially is a grant. It's essentially a grant because you're getting a loan, but you don't have to pay it back. It's a grant. Well, we don't have any grants projected for next year. That doesn't mean people won't get any, right?
Right.
Roy decides if somebody finds grant money to offset existing expenses, they're gonna appear right there. They're gonna mean revenue, money coming in, that means taxes collected. Right now, and so this is typically what the town does, is we don't actually plan on having grants. Right, which is again safe. Yes, we'll submit them, but we plan on winning 0. Right, which again makes us a little bit optimistic, mainly for the reason that we don't want to be in a situation where we plan on getting grants and then we don't get them and then the tax rate suddenly jumps up and everybody freaks out. Makes sense. However, for next year, that $100,000 free money is not there. Right, so
Can I ask a question?
I was gonna
Are you done?
almost
You
done.
keep going. Oh,
Here. So if you now add up all these numbers, if you add up all these numbers, you're gonna get very close. Actually, maybe exactly. Actually, oh, hold on. A reduction in revenue is actually costing you money. A reduction in loans is costing you money. So it's not an exact match, but you can essentially see that the reason why the taxes collected and this bottom number is taxes collect, like property tax revenue. The reason this property tax revenue is going up is for 4 reasons, right? We're spending $113,000 more in general fund. We're spending $35,000 more in CIP. Bringing in $160,000 less in revenue. We're not getting free money on the order of $97,000. Sum is you got to find $400,000 more. Now that number will come down if we get more revenues in, but that's how you get back to the whole, hey, why is the projected tax rate going up by 7 when the general fund costs are only going up by 1.5? Makes sense? Okay. Now, sorry. So
Can you go back to revenue for a second? Yeah, you steps up that, nope, no, go back now, sorry, a little bit. All right, so see the 266 for the subtotal, 2.266 for last year.
Yeah.
And then the 2.105.
Yep.
What I have heard here is that the 2.105 is a very, very conservative estimate. What makes me, no?
Not this
So-
year.
So he disagrees.
I
I
thought you
pushed them
said
higher.
permits and fees, and you're currently tracking much higher than 1.2.
Much lower.
Much lower.
Much lower.
We're really close to the 165 that we have in the budget as of last month and when we get the new.
So here,
update.
so this is currently 1.3,
Mhm.
right? That is what we submitted to the state in September. Okay.
Mhm.
We are closer to tracking it to 1.2. Actually, we're closer to track. Did we get to 52 this year?
No, we've got 49,260.
We got 49,260. So here, we're much closer to tracking, but that's only $3,000 difference. We're much closer tracking to essentially 1.2 than we are to 1.3. So stated differently, and this can happen too, we sent the state 1.3. We're thinking we're only going to get 1.2.
So here's where I was going when I thought we were being very conservative was, I don't feel that this is the year to be really conservative with our revenue estimates, because that's gonna suggest that our taxes have to be higher. And now in the SB two world, I'm afraid people will want to go to that default budget. So I don't want to put anything incorrect in here, but by the same token, I don't want to be
Yes.
conservative.
And so I had squeezed Ed last week for that specific reason. I think that number has increased from what was there on Thursday. I don't remember what it was. Is anybody happy with them? But
Yeah, we went up, I can. Revenues. I went up $10,000 on that. I'm pretty comfortable. We can go up probably another 5, but like I said, I wanna see those final numbers and,
But we're talking small numbers.
yeah.
yeah,
So
and we're not gonna go up 30s.
so here, if even if, so here, we're projecting to fall almost $100,000 short on that number. And we're not getting the 52. So that's a sporty value.
So Ed, can I ask a question in regards to revenue? Room and meals tax, does that come under the from state sources line?
Yes.
So, like, are we, not anticipating a very big drop in that, or, I mean, I keep hearing that there's a possibility that.
Not this year. There was a big concern going into last year and we budgeted down. And we ended up getting, I think it's 439, I'd have to look at that.
But I meant for next year.
445. So we budgeted, I increased that by $15,000. So we're sitting, I think, at 445 right now. I think we got 449. So we're trying to stay a lot closer to that.
And you,
I
and
think there
you're
were
comfortable with
proposals,
it being even that,
I think there were proposals in the legislature for far more reductions, but
right?
were not passed this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it got moved around. They changed the formula a little, but last year we got about the same, a little bit more. And it's a hard one because they always monkey with the formula and then it always depends on how much tourism. we have.
Right.
But- So, the one thing that we talked about and we'll continue to watch these and we moved them over this last weekend is to try to get pretty close to those numbers. I mean, so we're trying to not underestimate by 10 or 15,000 like we were doing to have that comfortable gap. Last year, we were really afraid going into the legislative session and next year may be interesting as well. You know, they set the budget and they have a lot of those types of legislation every 2 years as we go into the biannual budget season. So we're pretty confident this year from what happened last year legislative session, but we'll have to wait and see, but we'll budget as close as we can to those numbers.
So that's the value. If you now go to all the math for estimating tax impact, so here, if the money you collect is going up by 7.77% and you assume the property valuation doesn't change, your tax rate is going to go up by 7.77%. Pretty straightforward. A valuation change of 0% has, I think, never happened. I believe Ed told me the numbers on this weekend, and I think he said the last couple of years were like 0.8 or 1.1 as a valuation change. It moves the number a little bit, but not like earth shattering, right? So a 0.5% change in valuation drops your tax rate down from 7.77 to 7.2. A 1% change brings it back from 7.7 to 6.7. So if I had to gamble, it would be 6.7. So now we get back to Dean's spreadsheet. Everybody recognizes this lovely table. Check this. So here, 1 second. $6.7. So I'm sure you've seen this from the meeting, right? By the way, as you will see in the meetings later, I got really close to my estimate last time, right? But that was, I think, partially manipulated. So if you look at last year, right? In 2024, the rate was 16.91. My estimate was 17.84. We ended up at 17.83. Okay. Which was pretty much dumb luck because I estimated that the county rates were going to go up 3.5. They went up 7.7. I estimated the school rate was going to go up 1.9. It went up 3.8. That's probably because if the school budget goes up 1.9, Enfield's portion doesn't go up 1.9, right? And if I had the sophisticated equation they use, which maybe one day I'll get from a man, I could make that a better estimate. But again, the town's projected was 12.5. It was 8.7 because we reported more revenue. Make sense? State education was projected as 3.5 and is 1.7. So Dinya was like off everywhere. Okay. Magically within 1 penny. I have no comment on how that happened. So if I do the same thing, so what I did before was, we know what the school number is, right? I have people in the family watching their meetings and I listen and I put my most recent number in. And so I put for county and state, I just wag it at COLA. I want to put in 0, right? I've looked at the last couple of years too. Using last year's percentage is also very unreliable because the state numbers seem to be doing like absolute complete roller coaster ride for things I don't understand. So I'm just going to pick COLA. So if I pick COLA and I say county goes up 3.3, the school goes up 1, right? But if history repeats itself, and this has happened twice in a row now, the school is going to end up higher than 1. If the town repeats itself and increases not 6.7 and it goes down, it will probably offset again. And state is 3.2. Then if you do all the math, you magically end up at 3.1. So with my current best numbers, and I will sharpen the pencil as we go closer and closer and closer to the deliberative session, but I don't think this will massively change unless you do big changes on the things we control, which are our own end. I would budget for a change in property taxes on my personal checking account for 3.1%. I wish it was lower. So
Sure could be worse.
it could be worse. Okay, so now back to this. Okay. As a result of so here, we had discussions in the past. We had discussions at 2 meetings ago, I think. We're like, hey, we're gonna, Alyssa's gonna retire. We're gonna bring in a finance person. We're gonna have good overlap. We're gonna start recruiting soon, but we think it's gonna take like a half year to fill that position. So we're not gonna start budgeting for it until July 1st. That being said, in a discussion with the select board last week, we can't really wait until July to kind of shore up our finances and, document processes and improve things. And so, because if we wait until July, it's not really going to help next budgeting season because you can't expect a person to come in and then go, hey, boom, everything's fixed. It doesn't work that way. So, there's discussions with the select board on maybe getting some temp help from MRI between now and then. That's part-time to help. Granted, that costs money. That is currently not included. And the cost that people came up with for that was $40,000. So this is where the 10% number comes in. So if see here, this $47,000. Okay. For every $50,000 you spend, okay, makes sense? 50,000 out of 470, which I call $500,000. So for every $50,000 you spend, or for every $50,000 you bring in, the increase moves up and down 10%. So for example, if you decide I'm going to spend another $50,000 in something, right? And this number goes from, 470 to 520, then I think I can handle two spreadsheets. I constantly click between the wrong one. Then this number, right? The increase went from 500 to 550, so that number increases 10%. So essentially, if we spend another $50,000 to keep it round, you get a 10% increase. Similarly, if we find more money or we cut the budget by 10%, and so what I'm saying is, if the increase is $500,000 and you spend another 50,000, your increase goes up 10% of the increase. That's what I meant with my 10% increase.
So if it was 10%, it would go up to 11%.
Yes. Yes.
If it's not, but that just.
Yes. Right, round numbers. So like, if I projected the increase is going to be 3% and we're going to increase the increase by 10%, it becomes 3.3%. So essentially roughly every $50,000 extra brought in, or every $50,000 extra saved, or every $50,000 extra spent, will nominally move this number by 0.3%. So if you want that number to be zero, you gotta cut $500,000, right? Which makes sense because it goes up $500,000. If you don't want it to be an increase, you gotta save $500,000.
Right now, that number is 6.7%. Before you took your 50 out. Thought it was 6.7. Yeah, 6.7.
Yeah, I changed it. Without the $40,000 for.
We had a couple of things in play here. One is what we're hearing from Ed is we're lean right now. We don't have a lot of,
Very lean.
he's getting nervous, right? And I respect that. It's got a good handle on things, and I respect it when he says that. By the same token, we go out to the tax holders, the taxpayers, and say we're going up by 6.7%. Everything after that is going to be blah blah blah. You can tell them a whole bunch of stuff, but 6.7%, are you kidding me? I think it's too much. I think we need to be closer to 5. And again, I think 6.7, we're in danger zone of people saying, thank God we're doing SB2. Let's go to the default budget. And when we were 8, I was really nervous. But now even at 6.7, I'm marginally nervous. And I think we need to look for some creative ways for some savings or some extra revenue. And if that's not possible, it's gonna be some savings.
Yeah, we may be able to get a little more revenue. Like I said, we'll know at the next meeting, but it's getting a little late by then, but we can still make some of those changes.
That would likely be pretty marginal, right? In terms of increase.
Yeah, it depends where we end up on those, but it
$10,000 or.
could be 20, could be 25.
David, what's your opinion? You're very close to this, as we all are.
Well,
All three.
I think it'd be hard to sell another 6.7% because it's compounding the previous years of I haven't totaled it up, but it's a large percentile over the last 4 or 5 years. And that's hard to sell.
But knowing everything that you know, do you think it's a reasonable increase?
So before he answers that, right,
He's just a
again,
hunter. He's just-
I think, I mean, I can see where the individual line items have happened. I think the process that we should be using is is one of anything above and beyond the default budget we need to think really hard about. And that includes, you know, perhaps not each tiny little line item, but the broad departmental ones that say, okay, if this one's going up this much, where is it coming from? Where can we make some reasonable cuts that are not gonna, have major impact on services to our taxpayers? I'm admittedly fairly conservative about that.
so. One second. So. One I wanted to bring up is. I know people feel very strongly about the nickel. On CIP. Right? I believe I was the one no vote. For raising it over 3 years. I think the main reason people are concerned about raising it is the 4A trail project. If that was not there, that project was not there, the CIP balance would stay around the $1 million range. Right? The CIP balance gets eroded by almost half by that one project because the plan is if we get that and we go for the grant, we have to shove out $400,000 in cash.
Yes, but we're also trying to make sure the fund is stable. Now,
Right,
we're not at the nickel. That's gone. That's history.
Right. yes, but
What we've been putting in is $26,200 per year, which is the equivalent under the present assessment of about 2.5 cents.
Right.
What we're proposing is that we try to get back towards the nickel by going this year from 2.5 cents to approximately 3.5 cents.
right, and the question is this so is it the right time to do it? Without that project, I think people would be far less nervous about increasing the contributions. Because,
This is the trail along 4A.
yeah. Without that project, people would be far less concerned about increasing the contributions because the balance isn't going like in 2 years, right? In fact, if you take it out, the balance goes down a little bit and then pretty much starts going back up because we've caught up on the trucks. Yes, there's some big stuff out there, but I think if you looked 3 years out, there wasn't a whole lot there. And I think,
Isn't that, I mean, at least I think CIP recommended that go to the voters. Yeah, that,
Well-
It's a warrant article right
hold
now,
on,
or will be.
and it should be.
yes, but if it gets approved,
Then it has impact.
then it's gonna take the fund balance down, right? Because you don't have a loan approved to go loan against that money. If you only put in front of the voters, do you want to do this project? And they say, yes, we want to do this project, we're fine with spending the money. The fund balance goes from, I don't remember, 850,000 to 400. And people may claim, oh yeah, we're gonna fundraise, we're doing this, we're gonna get matches. I've heard it all before. It's gonna be pennies on the dollar that is gonna make a difference. I think what we should, in my opinion, this is an opinion, and it's interesting the chair and the vice chair here. In my opinion,
Most of this gonna be here.
in my opinion,
Don't have-
what we should be doing is, rather than putting an advisory thing in front of the voters, you put the loan in front of the voters. And if they vote for it, you can now loan the money. It doesn't completely blow away half your fund balance. If they don't vote for it, you take the signal of not getting a loan as a signal of don't do the freaking project. Right? So the answer would be, make it a loan.
I agree with you 100%.
And so, okay, now if you make it a loan, and the balance of the CIP doesn't get completely wiped out, maybe we can not increase it as much.
And this
And
may
we-
not be popular with the CIP, but it's also possible to either not have that proposal at all in the plan, for the next year. And just, or recommend against that. And. yeah,
I'll,
that specific-
I wanted, what I wanted to present was a solution. So here, again, I know people wanted to increase the contribution to CIP, but when I look at the hard numbers, I think the CIP balance is okay if we didn't suddenly just go spend half of it.
Right.
Right? A way to not do that is to get a loan. I know people don't like to get loans, but it's a way to do that. Because then if you get the loan, right? If you get the loan, you can now say, hey, we're not gonna make changes on CIP this year. We understand the tax rate increase is big, because at the end of the day, so here, to me, this is partially optics. Because I'm gonna go do something, we can just change the number back.
You're not getting the loan. You're getting the
No.
loan approved.
We're getting loan approval.
You don't have to get the loan
Correct,
if you don't get the grant.
correct. That's all, that's I'm after. So you get, what you were
And just to
getting
put
is,
A little bit more of a spin on it.
right,
The only reason it's there, the way it is because there were people on the CIP that didn't want it there at all.
I would say,
This was a compromise.
I would say there's concern on the CIP side. There's concern on some of the select board member
Yeah.
side. So the answer is, let's let the voters decide if it's a
Yeah.
project they want to do. And I agree with, I agree with Dimitri. I think the cleanest way to do this is to recommend to the select board that it goes on the warrant narrative as
so,
a loan approval.
with a sum attached to it.
so here,
Attached
So
to it
here.
of the maximum match of. the-
It does refine the warrant article to something that makes a little more sense than simply an advisory article. Should we or shouldn't we? Because it's vague, and the discussion is gonna be, how much are we talking about is gonna be the first question at the first person at the microphone.
I also think it's cleaner, because if people sitting in the voting booth don't understand or didn't read enough to understand how much money is in CIP, almost everybody understands a $500,000 loan.
Right.
It's pretty simple for people sitting in the
So,
booth.
I want to add one more reason. So I thought about this, and in the end, I don't think this matters a whole lot, and here's why. Okay, I think this is mainly an optics thing. Everybody knows we've always been doing the same amount every year. The 26, even 26,200? Okay. I think on the deliberative session, it's gonna be a lot more valuable if you tell them, we're just gonna do the same thing. We know the tax rate is gonna increase more than you like. We're just gonna do the same thing you did before, versus saying, oh, by the way, we're gonna add another X amount of dollars to it. Because at the end of the day, so here, I made it 26,200, right? It changed it by 0.1%.
Right, it's pennies. The difference between 34,000
I
and
know.
26,000.
I know, but it's
Hardly recognizable on a tax bill.
right, but so here, if you,
But it's what we're trying to do is establish what the original foundation rule was to migrate the annual increases towards 5 cents per thousand on the tax rate. And I know it was called a nickel, but it's
And so-
5 cents.
So here, I wouldn't, I'm throwing this out there as an idea. If people say, no, we want to leave it at the same, I don't care. It's 0.0. What was it here before? It's 6763 now. $763 now.
Calculate.
Yeah, I'm just want to do it with 763 to 777. So it's 0. Not even 0.1%, right? So it doesn't make a difference. I do think, though, we don't want to wipe out half of the CIP fund, because even this small increase doesn't really solve that problem. It's a couple of $1,000s more, and I think the warrant article should be alone, so that it doesn't wipe out the CIP fund or half of it.
Well, I think that's the reason for the vote, for the warrant article. being refined.
Right,
And as the warrant article says right now, it's the grant plus a 20% town match.
Right.
And so it's the town match that would theoretically come out of CIP. But I think that article makes sense to let people know what the dollars that would come out of the town would be. And then from that point, it can be decided whether or not that is done as a match from the capital improvement program or whether it's done as a loan.
well, no, you have to write it as a loan, because if you don't have the loan approval, you can't get it.
But we haven't even been approved for the grant yet.
Who cares? If you don't get the grant,
It
don't get the loan.
It doesn't
Exactly.
happen.
If the
But-
grant comes along, you can then talk about getting the loan.
No, you can't.
You can't,
Not before the next,
You-
Once a year, you can get a loan approval.
You would get loan approval now.
You have to get loan approval now or you can't.
and it's based on the grant.
Then I think we write it up as loan approval.
If the budget committee would like to do that, it would be a motion to recommend to the select board to write it.
So here, I thought
So
about this earlier. It's, hold on. Like, I originally was like, hey, when we get the grant, we can then decide to go get the loan, but you can't, because if you get the grant, you can't go to the voters to get a loan because you have to wait until
and if we
March
don't
of
have approval for the loan,
2020.
then it's a-
Seven.
You're limited under SB2. Under the former program, you didn't have to wait. You could have done a special vote. But
Right.
that's all right. Under SB2, you do have that limit.
And so you would get the loan approval, but then if you don't get the grant, then the next year we put a thing on the ballot saying we're gonna rescind the loan approval.
No, this is the
No.
year to do it if you're gonna.
Yeah. So the warrant article is, the narrative is revised to say that if the grant is approved.
The budget committee can't make that decision, but they can recommend to the.
No, that's right.
To write this as a loan approval and not what's currently on. the
With a list of
I'm
amounts. So before we, if the grant is approved.
Listed in
And if the grant is approved. I mean, it hasn't actually been approved.
Before we do any vote, I'd like the opportunity to give you my opinion, but I noticed that somebody said their
Yeah,
hand
sorry.
3 times out there.
Oh, that's all right. So I think, I had two things. One, I think, and Tracy already did, I think the loan approval is very much more transparent.
Mhm.
But also, we also don't run into 2 years from now when our CIP is cut in half. People say, well, I voted for that, but I didn't understand it was gonna cut our CIP in half.
Exactly.
And two, this is even more important to me anyway, is that, does anybody know what our surrounding towns proposed, tax rate increases are this year? I mean, I know Lebanon's is like
crazy.
way up there, but does anybody know, like Hanover, Grantham?
I heard high single numbers at
Oh, yeah,
Hanover,
Hanover's on a fiscal year, that's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I've heard they're speculating at Hanover, high single numbers. Lebanon is looking at low double digits.
Yeah, I have one of my people works in Lebanon, lives in Lebanon, I think they're talking 13-14%.
Yeah.
The last I heard, and this isn't, don't quote me on it, but Canaan was someplace in that 9 to 11. So I think 6.6 is,
Pretty good.
you're the best one in the Upper Valley.
I will tell you what my mother always said, all right? I don't give a damn what the other kids are doing. I do. So going back to this idea for this walkway, I've always been against it. And I think it shows very poor taste, even going out, putting it on a warrant article. We're losing touch with the taxpayers. We have people in this town that are hurting, and we want millions of dollars to put in a friggin' walkway.
So you're losing touch with some of the taxpayers. I get lots of calls for people that really want this trip too.
There is a contingency that wants it considered. A grant has been made, has been identified. I think it's fair to let people decide. Yes or no, and
And vote no,
It-
definitely.
they can vote no all day long.
No, and I respect.
And I think support will be divided on both this committee and CIP.
Agreed.
And we should be vocal about that.
I guess from my standpoint, the thing that bothers me the most about it is I have always felt like, okay, CIP is a great thing to a certain point, but then there are times I feel like people feel like it's free money and we'll just keep spending. And for me, I don't feel like this walkway is something that we have to have. Equipment, mowers, trucks, police cars, all that, those are needs that we have to have. We don't have to have a walkway, and I just feel like it's very poor to take that out of money that all of us have worked hard to put aside. I just, I'm
I
totally.
agree with you personally. I don't think it's part of this discussion for this committee.
Well, I'm just talking about budget impacts, David. That's
Okay.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Well,
so-
I don't think it belongs with the CIP. I agree with Jean.
Yeah.
But I think that the town has a right to vote in on this, because I think there are a lot of people around that would like to see a safe way of moving around town.
I think the message that I'm hearing from all of you as a recommendation of the select board, clearly enough, is remove the possibility of taking the money from the CIP. That's number one. The second item is to present it as a potential loan for the match.
Right.
The loan of X dollars, which could be identified as a cost. And then people can decide yes or no based on that evaluation. But
Yes.
remove it from the CIP.
So moved.
And I
Yeah.
think the other thing that ties to that for me is every time we do something like this, it keeps stretching DPW a little more and a little more. And pretty soon, somebody's gonna say, we need 3 more people for DPW because we can't begin to keep up. Look what's happened to Lakeside. That's a beautiful spot. Don't get me wrong. I've gone down there. I've enjoyed it. But guess who takes care of that? DPW. It's not a free thing. So that's my,
So I move
Community
that the
It's not
budget
free.
committee recommend to the select board that they pursue this as a warrant article for a loan to for along with a matching grant, rather than other approaches.
With the dollar amounts identified.
Right.
Clearly,
They would
Yep.
have to be.
Yep.
We can't write one without it.
Right.
I second.
yeah. I
Any
don't-
discussion? All
No,
in favor?
I think that's the way it's gotta be.
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? One against.
so what are we voting on? I
Wait,
didn't vote.
We can't vote for or against it. That's a CIP, that's a CIP committee.
loan
So
rather
we're
than
recommending to the
advisory.
select board that they consider a loan. If they're gonna do it at all.
Two against?
They can't decide if it's gonna happen, but they can decide.
Like, we're just recommending to them that they, hey, don't make it a cash out of CIP, make it a loan.
Yeah,
If
you're not
gonna do this,
recommending
make it a loan.
approval of that.
Okay, so
You're
what-
recommending it go on the warrant ballot.
So we're down to vote.
Now, is it
Yep.
a warrant article that we will approve or disapprove?
Yes, it is a warrant article that you will.
If it's a loan, we're gonna recommend or not recommend.
Because if they see that we don't recommend it, that's important.
It could be
Right.
amended to 0 too.
After the session.
Great session. So,
Okay.
so how does that discussion that we just had affect our budget?
So in my mind, two reasons, right? I wanted to, one, had a hidden, I wanted to really save the CIP budget. And I wanted to see if the CIP budget saved changed the mind of people on the CIP committee on how fast that should grow. At the end of the day, for example, if everybody on, if you said, and you said, and everybody on CIP
You
said,
can't
hey,
do it here.
I know.
Just make that clear.
I know, this is not a CIP meeting, but if people went like, hey, if the CIP budget doesn't get eroded, I'm fine delaying, right, the growth of the CIP fund. And then it would have had an impact of 0.1%, right? If people were even half, I don't really know that it makes a difference, I would like, fine, just don't bother with it. Because my main reason was actually, hey, let's keep the CIP fund healthy, and I'm concerned even with this increase. So that solves that problem. If we're gonna keep the CIP the way it is, which is the way right now it was voted on at the 613,835, we are looking at a 7.77% increase in property tax revenue collected, which is forecasted as a 6.7%
Increase of all.
increase over last year, which would lead to a, you know, a WAG of a 3.1% increase in your bill. Of which 6.7 is the town. Yes.
I'm gonna say something you guys don't wanna hear. Nobody gives a crap what the increase is. There's only two numbers they wanna know. What's the default number? What's the budget number?
Right.
Always been like that with the school district. They don't care what the percentage increase is.
Because it's
They
not
wanna
in your-
know what's the gap between what the default is and what the budget's going to be. If it's 6.7 or 5%,
And
doesn't
it-
make any difference.
actually,
400,000 or 600,000, it makes a difference.
right, actually, it's even worse than that. Because in that article, we don't even vote on the general fund budget.
That gets voted on at the deliberative session.
No, it gets, you vote on that article, and you can, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong.
Right.
We are voting on this number.
Amending or voting, yes. What? That could be that number.
That one,
Budget,
We're voting on the total.
we're voting on the total
bottom
of
line
all
budget,
funds,
that's it.
Right. Yeah.
right? We're not voting on this guy.
No, you're not voting on the difference, you're voting on the total.
No, we're not,
But
me,
that-
we're
But
not.
that's what they see.
Right, they're gonna see the 9.464 and
What's your default?
they're gonna see the 9464 and the 9269.
Yeah.
They're gonna see this.
Basically 200K difference.
Right.
They're gonna see this.
Much on this roadway?
Yeah.
You want money from soccer? We're gonna screw ourselves.
That's you're right. That's the number they want to see. The percentage number means nothing.
Well, no, it's even worse than that. How do I get rid of this column now? I didn't want that column. So 9,268,980. So these are the two numbers they're gonna see.
Yeah.
And actually, it includes water, sewer, TIF, and the whole nine yards.
Bottom of your
Right.
Yes.
So I hear what you're saying, Dan, but I can't
Now,
imagine
at-
people not going to the mic saying, and this is 6.7.
Hold on,
over last year.
We're talking about, this is what people will see on the ballot, in the ballot box, the
Right.
day they're
Only if
gonna
it's-
check
only
the
if That's
box.
approved by the deliberative session.
If that is approved by the deliberative session, this is what they're going to see, these two numbers. They're not gonna see that number. They're not gonna see this. They're gonna see these two numbers.
They would see that anytime see that is only at the deliberative session.
At the deliberative session, when I give my presentation,
Yeah.
right? In the deliberative session, then you will give all the rows and colors where the numbers come from, and they're gonna know exactly that this 946 includes that. But the people who don't go to the deliberative session, who just go vote to check a box, yes or no, will see these two numbers.
Just check one or the other.
And they say yes,
No,
You get
vote
this?
yes or
You
no.
say yes
you
or
know,
Yes or no?
you vote
Yes
for
on the
that.
budget, if not, then the default budget is.
The no is the default.
So if the answer is yes, this applies. If the answer is no, this applies. Heck, they don't even see,
And David will agree to this too.
They-
You're talking about a $20 million budget, right? How long's the budget presentation? 8, 10 minutes at the most?
I don't know.
Closer to 5
Who knows how long it's
But
gonna be in this, you know, I mean,
for the school district?
Oh,
Closer
school
to 5,
yeah, and how many people are there?
right?
I mean, you've been on the budget committee when I was the only one there.
Yeah.
and so
Public.
like they won't see this number. They will not see any of these numbers. The only thing they see is the two yellow numbers.
They all.
I'm not using that as a reason to convince you. I'm just trying to make it clear
Right.
what people will see in the warrant.
They only see the 9463.
No, they
So
see
they
the
will see the different-
9262.
They see the two
both.
numbers.
Default.
So if you remember the school board, whenever you vote for that one, it actually shows two numbers.
Right.
And it shows the proposed budget and the actual budget. And some years the proposed is lower than the default.
Right.
And And, you know, so, yeah, anyway,
So I, as a budget committee member, feel as though we need to work on that 9463. We need to bring that down. And I would throw out a couple of ideas on ways to do that. I don't know if this has been done in the past. I don't know if it's allowed to be done in the past. But can we open up or reconvene the CIP group to take a look at their work?
What are you trying to
So-
cut out?
actually, hold on,
I would leave that to that group.
hold
I'm
on.
not trying to cut out anything.
Point of order. Okay. That will also not be on that article. There's gonna be a separate article for this number
613.
with the 613.
Right.
And actually-
Up or down.
It's an up or down. So if they voted down, you get 0.
Zero.
So thanks for pointing that out. I more strongly encourage the CIP committee to get together and look for savings. That'd be one thing. The second thing I would look at is I run some numbers and I looked at as crazy as looking to reduce the 7.952 by 5%. And then I knew that wasn't gonna be possible based on conversations I've had. So at 2.5%, that's gonna give us about $260,000 in savings, which funny enough is gonna get us much closer to that default budget.
That puts you below the default budget.
It does slightly, yes.
The default budget and the proposed budget are only $195,000 apart.
Let's say there might be a
That's TIF.
$7,800 increase in the TIF side for a project that they're talking about this week.
Hey,
So-
Tracy, you're suggesting
So
that,
they're only 2.1% apart.
and you think that's acceptable, what I'm hearing?
I think that that's a reasonable approach, is to say, we've prepared a budget that is only 2.1% above the default budget. You're being asked to vote on only one item. Keep it or default it.
Mhm.
And the difference is 2.1%, $195,000. In a full year increase, that's pretty good.
No, it is.
But
So
you said,
I would vote for our budget, all right? But I think there's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna be going back, looking at what we've done historically in this town, the increases that we've had. And there's gonna be it might be just a loud minority, but there's gonna be loud voices saying, yeah, we need to go with this default. And I would like to see our actual proposed budget be closer to that default budget than $194,000.
you said TIF is considering,
They're considering a $7,800 project, which will be offset by revenue, but it'll change those numbers. They did a floodway study last year and they wanted, or I shouldn't talk to them, they're gonna be discussing a project this year to do some modeling for a lot bigger project that could come down there, but they wanna make sure that that project is gonna actually do what they want it to do before they propose a project.
But that's separate funding too, isn't it?
But it goes in this number.
It's
It's,
good.
it's offset on the revenue side, so it's no impact. But if you're adding up these numbers that include TIF, it'll be
Yep.
$7,800 more in that number.
But it's offset by tax money which has been collected and set aside in the TIF fund.
but people don't realize.
Exactly. Yes.
True, but what can be pointed out is if the modeling is correct, we're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in increased revenue and property taxes from the stretch of land that it affects. The piece of land that it affects on Route 4 would have an increase in taxes, which is huge, as well as improving land that presently can't be used that's owned by the town. So it's a very small investment in potentially rather large return. You agree?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, we can look at this, we can look at, I mean, when you look at it that way, you know, we can look at water sewer budget, we can look at different things. That doesn't affect your tax rate at all, but it'll change that bottom number. You know,
Yeah, but
if
that-
we're looking
But
at the
that-
top
but that's
number
not
is what we
really
need to
fair.
talk about in here, we're about $100,000
I
difference.
don't think we wanna play games, though. I think if we're gonna
Play games.
make some
No.
adjustments in the budget, up or down,
Yeah.
it needs to be transparent and it needs to be clear.
Yeah.
And,
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, we're looking at all of those funds, not just the general fund budget to do that.
So then, this doesn't even include the $40,000 we discussed yesterday for the part-time MRI.
When we can talk about that, but everything we're looking at adding that I can figure right now is a one-time expense. It will go into here, but I would recommend that come from fund balance because it's a one-time thing.
Yeah.
It's a problem that we're trying to deal with right now. Everything we have in the budget right now will cover any future expense on that.
So Ed, speaking of the temp help, I think this is probably the right time and place to ask this question. And I'm sad that Emily is, but I know what she's doing and I'm happy for her. But my question is there gonna be any overlap with Emily, leaving and a new person beginning like we have other
And
positions?
we're working on that. That has nothing to do with this temp help.
No, I know it has nothing to do with this one. I'm just
We're
talking.
trying to do that, but it's dependent on how fast we can hire somebody and when they can leave their job and come here. The chief can speak to it better than I can, but we're working with Emily too, to work a little bit part-time past that, to have some training opportunity and those types of things.
So that's what I'm asking. So there will be some overlap then between Emily and the new person? Is that what we're saying?
We're trying to get them to work together some to
Okay.
have that. Yeah, we absolutely would love to have that happen.
And so,
But I'll make that work within my budget.
okay, that was,
I think that's where you're getting to, and
I am.
I'll make that work in my budget.
Thank you.
That's on me, that's
Thank
my
you.
department, I will,
Thank you. That was my
I-
question, because I know we've had other positions that there's, like, when the rec thing, we had a big overlap and then there was more cost, and so that's what I was getting
Yeah,
at, but I'm not surprised that you're doing that because my hat's off to you, and I know that you have always done a great job of doing whatever you can, within your budget.
And I will say, just so the budget committee knows, there's been other things that have come up, like, oh, we just found out about this increase, and I've told people, no, we're not adding it in. We'll figure out how to make it work. And, you know, some of those things are the things that play into my head of, we're getting really tight on the ability to manage those things that are going to happen every year. So we get too much tighter and there's a pretty good chance, there's a decent chance we might end up overspending. So you can cut, but you can only cut.
Do you have specific recommendations beyond just,
Well, no, before we go too far, I'd like to take the temperature of the rest of the budget committee. How are you feeling about a delta of $200,000?
I agree with you. I'm worried about it. I've listened to all the discussions in here. I think all that we're proposing is very well justified and reasoned out. I also think that there are a lot of people who are having a tough time and they're gonna say, what I see is that you're not hearing me. I don't think you're hearing that I just can't do this budget, and I wanna see where you're feeling some pain.
Mm-hmm.
so,
Yeah, sort of mine. I know Tracy says only 195,000 or whatever, but in, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge amount, but to people that are out there that are struggling and having a tough time, exactly, they're gonna say, okay,
Well,
I
I
just,
need to relate that to the specific impact on them. I don't think that that's a particularly onerous amount. And I think I can explain it to people.
I'm actually, so people who don't show up, so here. I can't help people who decide to go to the booth and just vote no.
right,
Or people that
I
get
will
on the,
only, I
get
will
on the-
only make those people happy if the proposed budget is less than the default. Right? And so if the proposed budget is equal to the default, like, I don't think I'm gonna be able to satisfy the people who just say no, right? The people who show up, I think are gonna understand that, hey, a 1.4% or a 1.5% increase when the COLA is like 3.5, or with whatever's going on, is actually pretty freaking good. And I think they're gonna accept that. I actually think the people who show up are also gonna be like, oh man, I actually wish it was 0. Because I understand that even though you're telling me the budget will go up 1.45%, that the taxes are gonna go up more. But they're gonna understand, they're gonna be able, just like a town meeting, they're gonna be able to have a discussion. The people who don't show up, who go vote and just pick the lower number, they're not gonna even know that even by picking the lower number, their taxes are not gonna stay the same. They're gonna go up.
Still gonna
Right.
go up, yeah.
Like, even if you pick the default budget, your taxes are gonna go up.
Well,
Because-
that's another
Well,
point
what's-
to make during the
What's the
presentation.
difference between the increase in taxes between the?
So
two
here,
budgets?
here, hypothetically speaking, right, let's do this as an exercise, right?
Mhm.
Not suggesting we do that, if other people
Mhm.
may make motions, but if I now make the increase flat. Like, no increase, 0% increase on the town side, right?
Mhm.
It's still 5.9%. It's still gonna go up 6% if you make it flat. Unless, and I'm sure, see, I'm gonna throw a grenade in the middle of the room. I'm throwing a grenade in. If you wanna make a difference, if you wanna really make a difference, right? Start charging for trash.
Okay.
So, Judge,
What do you think we've been saying?
But I'm serious.
But it is.
Right,
$750,000.
But that people love their trash bag.
Right, so here, and so I have pulled this in a couple of different areas, right, and this is gonna be a very hot topic. You know, if you talk about this 194 being a hot topic, I think the trash is
About
gonna be a topic that is 10 times hotter, right? Because here's how people are gonna see it, in my opinion. I could be totally wrong. So, I'm already paying for it. It's in my taxes. Why should I pay twice for it? That's the initial reaction people are gonna have.
Right.
Even
It's
though
also a contracted expense at this point for this
Yes.
coming year, right?
yes,
It's going to be a contracted expense every year.
Right,
right.
At
And so-
some point you renew the contract,
Well-
or not.
Yeah.
But
Right.
this year it's it's a contract that has been
But-
renewed for the upcoming year. It's
But
not
people are gonna
something we
think
can't-
I don't get taxed twice. I pay for it in my property tax and now I have to pay fees for it.
Well-
Even though I understand the goal is actually to make it more fair.
I
Right.
can tell you from going up there, as I've said before, for 3 days, 2 hours apiece. The stuff that goes on up there is costing the town money. And the town cannot continue to absorb all that nonsense up at the transfer station.
And so I don't disagree.
It's a discussion for this year.
Right, but I'm saying, so here, if,
It's small money.
so, well,
Small money.
If you charge $3 a bag for a 30-gallon bag up there, you make about $60,000 a year.
You charge $5 for it.
Yeah, there's gonna be a tipping point where
They close the place.
you say that, a lot of other people say, get rid of curbside and keep that.
Okay, do one or the other.
Yeah. Right, and so my point is, like,
Why we live
That
like
would
we're
be a
Hanover?
million.
You're gonna,
Hanover doesn't have.
the original philosophy in putting in
The only
It's a
town
pickup
that does.
in this town, because it didn't always have trash, and we're one of the few towns that still does.
The only one.
The original philosophy had to do with the huge number of people who move in the summer, combined with a number of people who are less than proficient at throwing away their trash. And
Nicely
so
said.
it was looked at and it was decided between all the summer residents who would leave it behind on their driveway and not care, and others, it was decided to put in a trash room. And not all towns have it. Hanover doesn't have it. You have to hire privately.
Lebanon
Now,
doesn't
if we
have
went
it.
to that route and hired privately, there would be dozens and dozens of people who would be excluded. Because quite frankly, there are a few dozen people who are excluded right now. Casella doesn't go to them, can't go to them. They're on private roads. I don't know the exact number, but it's around 35 or 40 people at minimum that I know of that don't get picked up no matter what they do. And they have to go to the transfer station no matter what. So if you do change the rules, you gotta take into account these people who paid their property taxes and can't get their trash picked up under those tax rules. But that whole thing, to me, is off topic.
But
I'd like to bring it back to the 195,000 and say, is it acceptable to say what the budget could be versus the default budget? Or do you want to keep discussing
Right, so-
reducing the difference?
my point for the off topic was actually, I don't think it is off topic because it's a big expense in the town, right? Depending on how you handle it, you're gonna do something or you're not gonna do anything about it. And the number is anywhere between, from what I've heard, $0 and $400,000, right? Depending on what you do, anywhere between 0 and 400,000. $400,000, I'm not saying we do this year at all, or next year or the year after, but $400,000 makes this increase to 0. Right, my point is, we can try to. I don't see how, and I tried to prove this point by making this a 0 increase. By nickel and diming the top line more, the bottom line is still gonna be a 6% increase. Unless you bring in more revenue like doing trash. And so people always like to focus on this number, right? But in my mind, here, if there was a 1.45% increase in the tax rate, would we be having this discussion?
No.
No, then why is it not okay to discuss revenues? Right? And so I'm trying to make the point that just focusing on the top line is like half the pie, right? In future years, if we're really worried about the fact that revenues are not keeping up with inflation and we're projecting decreases and all that other stuff, find more revenue. And if the town is making a conscious decision, no, we're not going to find more revenue by increasing fees. No, we're not going to find more revenues by, doing this or having people pay for service, then you're going to see tax rate increases, even if your budget is flat.
So it sounds to me like some people are gonna sound more blunt than I want it to sound, but it's scared of a default budget, right? And the reality is you shouldn't, right? The people of Enfield elect our budget committee to put forth what they believe the people of Enfield want, right? And so we've gone line by line, department by department, and you as reasonable representation of Enfield have come up with this budget that's approximately, $200,000 above or, 1.4% more than last year's. And the services that the people of Enfield, you believe that you represent, want.
Right.
Now, if it goes to the voters and you put forth the budget that you believe represents what the people of Enfield want, right? And I'm out there, one thing you'll never catch me standing up in town talking about is doing a trash pickup. Because people light you on fire, okay? Whether I agree with it or I don't agree with it, okay? So, with that being said, I believe, we had a guy that said the saying not long ago when we were starting the project, and I really liked it, straight face test, right? Can you stand up there with a straight face and say, hey, this is what we believe represents what the people of Enfield want in services? Because that's what it costs you, right? Not exorbitant amount, basic services, good services, because that's what Enfield's known for. And if they voted down as no, we get the default budget, right? Us department heads, we have to deal with that. We have to work with that. But then next year, when there are some services that are cut due to the fact that we had to cut back because the voters said no, and people come back and they say, well, wait a minute, we didn't do this road, we didn't do this project, we do that. We say, well, we put it in there, you voted no on the budget, this is what it costs to do business as it increases. I think you guys have done a great job keeping, with inflation at 3.2%, keeping this at, 1.4%, 1.6%. I think that's commendable. I think that's a lot, between you and all the departments sitting down and saying, look, I've been chief for 8 years, going on 9 years. I work through my budget as much as I can. I'm scared going into this budget year because, I'm gonna be, I don't like, looking at single digit percentages going into my last, month or two, because you never know what's gonna happen. But that's what's gonna go into next year, and that's fine. That's my job. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna look for those grants you were talking about that don't, aren't in there yet, right? To give me a little wiggle room. But I think that if you chip away anything at this point, you're either doing one of two things. You're taking a service away that we all know that the town, the majority of the town of Enfield want. Or we're chipping away at benefits or compensation for employees, which town of Enfield just caught up. So we don't want to take, one step forward, two steps back. And so I think you can pass that straight face test and stand up there and say, this is the best budget we could give you and give you the services that we understand that you want.
And I will add one to that. For that reason, I actually don't want the numbers to be the same.
You don't want the numbers to be the same.
I don't want the numbers to be the same.
No, because then people think, oh, you can do what you're doing
For less money.
for less money,
Yeah, that's true.
and they're not seeing the services that they're not. And then what happens when you do that is they come forward and they say, well, wait a minute.
Next year should stay the same too.
And also,
Exactly.
I would have voted for trash pickup if I'd known that that had been cut out. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and that's why you guys get voted, right, is to be that representation of people. Not only the taxes, but what do you want?
So can I ask another question? Because I have lost track, even though I've been doing this for several years now. Have we ever had I know there's been motions. Have we ever had a budget that the budget committee presented voted down in the
We
past?
have, in
10
my
years?
time, we haven't even had one that was close to not passed.
No.
I thi-
Like 86%, I think, was the closest year that I saw.
If we recommend it as a whole, I think like Roy said, they trust us. And the majority will vote for it.
Mhm.
But if we're divided, that's when the
That's
problem
where you get
begins.
interesting.
If you see something on the warrant where only half of the select board or half of the budget committee recommend it, then people begin to really question it. But if we stand together and recommend it as a whole, I don't think we'll have a problem.
That's probably a good point, Shirley.
Well, I don't disagree with anything that you said, other than, my position would be the same, whether we had the threat of a default budget or not. We were elected and put here to do exactly what you said.
Mhm.
And people want not only the services to be maintained, but they want their taxes to be as low as possible. And over the last couple of years, we've seen some pretty significant increases. So I feel like we've been asked to drill down on this. And are we there yet? I don't think we are completely, and others can disagree with me. I think there's some more room to go. But I think we're getting close. I don't feel like we need to be within $100,000. It's not what I'm saying, but I do think there's probably still some more opportunities.
Well, per what Dimitri suggested, if there are revenues, thoughts, then present something for a revenue thought.
Or an expense adjustment?
Yeah, you need to tell us
I'm
what you're
thinking
talking
if
about,
you think that
because we don't
the
just go.
See,
by numbers.
trash system can be improved with enhanced revenue,
I don't think it. I don't
then
think
make
so.
a presentation and the select board would take that under consideration at the next meeting.
I said, actually, I would just keep it the same, right? Because I'm like, I'm in the camp of, I'm already paying for this in my taxes. I don't want to pay for stickers. Even though it may be wrong. I agree that if I go to the transfer station,
Right.
I'm costing the town more money. I should probably pay something. But that being said, so the thing I do want to do is, so I don't really want to go say, hey, town, you have to cut 2% out. I would rather see if you have specific suggestions for changes to specific line items, that those are proposed and voted on. And
Yeah.
that's how we.
Okay. Do you want them now or?
Yep.
Can you give me a little time?
No, I think we should do it now, right?
I don't think I can give you specific lines and numbers now. The
Okay.
two ideas that I gave you
Then-
were asking the CIP to consider reconvening and taking a
Right.
look, see if they have any room. I think there probably is some room there. I think
Yeah.
you didn't have all the information you have today. The CIP did not. So to look at it through a new lens, I think is a worthwhile exercise. I also think there's some percentage that can come out, and I get you want line items. Is it 2.5%? Probably not. Is it 1% could we take out? Probably. There's probably more in there. So I would request some time and I can try to give you line items if that's the way you want to go.
With regard to the CIP, you're taking it out of a fund that already exists. So the reduction in expense is in the contribution to the fund, not from the fund itself. Cutting it down on what you spend from the fund doesn't do anything, because it's in the fund. What you wanna do if you're trying to cut expenses is you've gotta cut the contribution to the fund. If you cut the contribution to the fund, you have to be aware that it has an effect, a trailing effect over the next several years that have been looked at, because the committee looked at 6 years, they didn't look at 3 or 2, they looked at 6 years. Which includes some bridge work, et cetera, significant expenses. And so if you wanna make a recommended cut, it has to come from the contribution to CIP, not from the CIP itself.
Understood, thank you.
So
Right.
it's not for the committee to look at it and say, we don't want to buy this truck, or we don't want to buy a cruiser.
But the point
That doesn't matter. We're gonna buy a truck, we're gonna buy a cruiser.
Mhm.
The question becomes, do we
How do we-
allow the contribution to go into the fund? And if you cut that, you certainly can recommend it, but then it has a trailing effect over several years.
So on the same note, if the 613 gets voted down, then what?
If the 613 gets voted down, then the committee has to live with what they've got in the fund and present it again next year.
We're gonna be back to loans for everything.
We would, exactly, we would be back to loans for everything. We would still end up have to look at everything, and it wouldn't affect anything that we buy this year,
Yeah,
because that doesn't save any money, because it's already in the fund.
speaking of loans, I didn't see in last year's budget, and I don't see it pointed out in this year's budget, where the money from the fraud went and how that's being paid for or financed.
It won't be in the general fund budget. I need to talk to the auditors a little bit, cause it looks like it may have been absorbed last year.
Yeah.
But if not, we'll be talking to the select board about where.
You mean the fraud from 6 years ago, not the fraud from 2 years
Last year,
ago?
no,
Last year.
The 2-year fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the $350,000 that I haven't seen accounted for anywhere yet.
Yeah, it will be, but I need to work with the auditors on that. It doesn't
I think that should be presented at the deliberative session as part of the information that
Yeah,
the
let me get,
select board presents.
I just got some numbers from the auditor today. We didn't get the draft audit, but I got some numbers and it looks like that may have been absorbed, and I wanna confirm some stuff.
And when you say absorb, what does that mean? Does it go into the loan or what?
No, it goes into our expenses from 2024.
Unspent,
Right.
fund balance.
So like same thing again, right? There's money going out, there's money coming in, and the fraud is money that went out.
Yeah, I was looking at the MS 535 and it showed that we were $372 overspent, which is about the right amount.
72K.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just wanna talk to them about how that came about and where it's at, and because if they absorbed it as a cost in that year, then we've already absorbed it kind of out of fund balance, if you would.
Yeah. So then does that mean our fund balance will actually go down another 370?
No, you got the number already with that in there.
Also, the 55 includes the 370.
Overspent, wherever that
Oh,
came
okay.
from, and I can't say that's where it came
Got
from,
it.
but it triggered in my mind that, that's awfully close to the number that. So I need to spend a little time talking to them. If not, the select board's had a brief discussion, they'll have to have a more bigger discussion, but they had a little bit of a discussion about it possibly coming from fund balance or somewhere like that.
Would that require a separate vote too?
It would have to be, yeah, absorbed somehow. So it won't be on this year.
The select board is allowed to vote on fund balance.
We're still closing out finances on those, so it'll happen, and it'll be very transparent when it happens.
But the logic of it not becoming a part of the construction project and therefore part of the mortgage
Right.
is just common sense.
Yeah.
So we also have some interest that we've made, and we may be able to make a little bit more from that, which will help offset that as well.
Thank you for that clarification.
Just, yeah, one more clarification. So that means you'd have to write a check to Mascoma Bank to lower the loan balance.
We will
That's what I mean.
Everything
You're
will
gonna
have to go straight towards principal
Yeah,
at the end, and that interest has to go towards that. So-
right. But I also, the principal piece is gonna have to be lowered.
Yeah.
Because right now you've got a loan that's higher than what the building's worth.
Yeah.
No.
On the books.
On the books.
On the books you do. Cause you only got bills for X amount and you've got $300,000 above that.
Yeah.
In loan balance.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They may have written that up in general fund last year.
Okay, well, I think it needs clarification. If you can't tell us clearly, we don't know, from all sorts of perspectives, we certainly can't expect the taxpayers, and townspeople to know.
But that'll be after this town meeting when that gets rectified.
So in the past, when we've had discussions like this, hey, the numbers are too big. And this is why I kind of push back a little bit. I've kind of pushed back on saying, hey, the town should just lower everything by 1% and ask people of the public or the committee, come with specific proposals and we'll vote on them. If it don't happen today, we can vote on them next time. My plan for the next 2 weeks is work with Ed to get these numbers, after double checking everything, into a draft presentation. That draft presentation will be presented and discussed in a joint meeting with the select board here on January 8th. This body will get that whole presentation after it has gone through reviews by me and vice chair. No later than the January 5th. My goal is actually closer to January 1st, but I don't want to commit to January 1st. So you'll get an email in your inbox with a draft presentation that says, hey, everybody will be in BCC so that we don't get in trouble by doing a reply all to the whole select board and the budget committee. Here's the draft presentation. If you have comments, feedback, email them to me. If I can, I will include those comments and feedback by the presentation on 1/8, but I can't make guarantees. And then in here, we'll do this will not be public hearing, right? 1/8 is a standard budget committee meeting, but the select board will be present. Then the week after that, I will incorporate the feedback. And then the week after that is the date we talked about, which was what, 1/22?
22.
Was it? I don't remember. Then the week after that would be the public hearing.
Yeah, I think that's the 22nd, the 18th. I think
Okay.
that's then.
There may be some minor changes to, but I can't guarantee. There may be some minor changes to the slides between 1/8 and 1/22, only if the numbers associated to the 2024 5 actuals change. For example, in my presentation, I always have this is our estimated surplus, and here's the breakdown of the surplus, right? If I want to put a presentation together by 1/5, I'm clearly not going to have final numbers, right? They're going to be estimates. If the town revises those estimates, say on 1/13, I will update the presentation that will go to the public hearing to include those updated numbers. Does that make sense? Of course, the presentation that goes to the public hearing would also have any changes that happen as a result of voting on any amendments or articles or whatever during the 1/8 meeting. So if you, for example, have a suggestion to make things lower, have a discussion that actually gets passed, then again, the slides would change to reflect all those changes by the meeting of the 20th. Make sense? Any questions, concerns?
Not discussing this.
What is that?
The warrant.
Ah, okay, on the warrant. So the main reason I wanted to have the warrant, where did my things go? Wait, I not have the warrant? At the default budget? Oh,
I think it's the end of the packet.
Yeah.
okay,
Last 2 pages.
thank you. So the reason I wanted to go over warrant quick is because they did at the select board yesterday. But also because I wanted to have the discussion of the whole, hey, what does the specific language of CIP looks like? So Ed, do you want to walk us through the warrant quickly? so that people also,
Pretty much.
when,
Right, is over.
Yeah, we can start on Article 3.
quick question. So are we voting up or down on all the articles that will be in the warrant after the public hearing?
No. The way the process goes, and go ahead if you want to, is that, the select board presents the warrant, which will include our advice to the select board, on that article, to the group. There, is the opportunity for discussion and amendment to those articles
That deliberative session.
at the deliberative session.
She's talking about before that.
At the hearing, there's no change.
No,
Right,
but
like
you guys will vote.
When do we vote, hey, all those in favor of article blah, 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 blah? When do we vote on
At
that?
the public hearing.
At the public hearing?
After the public hearing.
At the deliberative session.
Well, no, which one?
No, that's not the problem. The public votes at the deliberative session. We would vote
At the public, after the public.
after the public hearing.
Okay,
Right.
right. So we don't need a separate meeting for that. Good. Just double checking. So on the 20th.
Yeah, I would recommend we do the public hearing. You hear what the public has to say, you close it, you make your vote for your recommendations on these that go to deliberative session.
Got it. Okay, thank you. All right, so this is a rough draft, so just a quick overview. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, so Article 3 is the we kind of talked about, we had the $1.9 million loan that we spent 0 of. We used all ARPA funds. Phase 2 of the sewer project is a $1.1 million SRF loan. So that's what Article 3 is about. Article 4 is $280,000 loan for a public works 6-wheeler municipal plow truck.
Question. If the advisory article becomes a loan, would it then become number 5?
It might move around
Okay,
a little bit. We'd have to look at where it's supposed to fall.
okay.
We need to become number 5.
So right now, the advisory article is, I don't know where this,
Yeah, DRA has rules that
It
where
is.
money articles move with fall.
Number,
I wasn't seeing it as an article.
I'm not even, where's
numbers.
That's, I got it.
Can't find it either.
On your
It's
top.
here.
Get to it.
here, 11, Article 11,
There it is. 11.
because it would become a
Oh,
loan.
yeah.
And I was wondering if that made it move up in the section
It would
because
move
it's
up.
now a loan.
It would move up to the money stuff. I
Right.
just don't know where it would fall. in.
It'll be one of the earlier ones.
Article 5 is the operating budget. And as you can see here, it would have 2 numbers that are highlighted, so.
Yep.
Article 6 is the appropriation for CIP. Article 7 is voting to appropriate $20,000 from the unassigned fund balance.
I have a question.
Yes,
So Article 5 doesn't say if it requires 2/3 or majority, but Article 6 does. Should Article 5 also say majority vote required, or should Article 6 not say it? Or are there rules for,
Article 5 is majority.
right, I know. But like, why does it not say it on 5 and it does say it on 6? That's my question.
Is it because it's a capital reserve?
I have no idea.
it might be. I can ask the clerks to look into it a little bit just to make sure.
That's the operating budget.
Yeah.
So the $20,000 from fund balance, as we
It looks
discussed,
like
it would
it's,
come out of this year's budget, falling into fund balance and would come back out. So we would explain that.
It looks like it's just missing
What?
majority of the vote required. This,
Yeah, I put it on here to see if it needs to go on here or not.
Did you guys discuss yesterday on the select board about Article 8 to actually add a dollar amount, or does that make the article really hard to
You're not
write?
supposed to do a dollar amount there.
Okay,
We're closing the account. And then the next article below it, Article 9, is moving the money from that account if it is closed. To
okay, got it,
see, I
Yep.
the CIP.
got it.
Right now, the
So,
select board will be deciding if that's where it wants to go, or
so in the past, it frequently happened that at the town meeting, we then voted on Article 9 because we realized the number was wrong. What happens if that number is wrong?
if there's a little bit less, we'll word it, so it. We
You
have
know
a
what I mean?
wording that'll say.
Yes. Okay.
So if there's a little bit more interest or
They
something.
allow minor correction.
Yeah, well, and if it's worded the way this is, say there was 16,000, that other $24 would fall into fund balance automatically.
Got it.
So
I'm following. Thank you. Which is
if they
fine.
decide not to put it in CIP, it could go to fund balance.
So essentially, if they vote yes on 8 and no on 9, it would just go to fund balance.
Yes,
Yes.
Got it. Okay, thank you for the explanation.
so Article 10 is doing away with the municipal water meter backflow capital reserve, as we discussed earlier. Budget committee.
Yeah,
So that
then,
money would fall into, by law, it'll fall into the water sewer fund balance. And
Yes.
if we wanted to move it to capital reserve or something, we could do that at a future time.
Okay.
The Walk a Mile grants, Article 11, there will be a recommendation to move that to a loan at the next select board meeting. We're looking to rescind the authority to borrow the $40,000 and the $129,584 that was approved at the 2021 meeting. Both of those projects have been completed and we didn't need the money, so it's nice to just give it back and get rid of that authority. And Article 13 is to authorize the selectmen. Pretty much this will change how they do, how they have to warn public hearings if we don't do this warrant article, which they'll decide at the next meeting. It stays kind of the same as it does now, where anything under $5,000 just gets noticed and anything above has to have a public hearing. So you can read that in the bottom there. So that's the warrant as it stands now. It's a very, very draft warrant still. Slight discussion about it at the select board meeting last night. Select board's gonna put some thought into it. Obviously, there's a recommendation coming from this board to their next meeting, and they'll approve the warrant. We'll do some fine tuning of it. We'll be getting this to the attorney for some wording recommendations soon.
I want you guys to have this because the next meeting, the select board will be here. Right? And so it'd be nice if you guys didn't see it for the very first time at the public hearing.
Appreciate it.
Anything else?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Just one more question. So what's your time? I know you're gonna take this and you're probably gonna work on it till 3 AM.
No.
I should.
Works here. So here's what's gonna happen. I intended to do this today, but I worked for like, I can't even see straight anymore. I worked for way too many hours, so I didn't even get to this. So after the meeting we had at the select board yesterday, my plan was today to write an email saying, these are all the things I need, and these are the dates I need them by, in order to finish this presentation by this date. My current plan is to do that tomorrow. I will definitely do it by Thursday, right? But my plan is here by tomorrow by noon, I want to have that email written, right? And it will go to Ed and you'll go in CC so that you can see, hey, this information will flow to Dimi for the need of his presentation. I've looked over the presentation, seen, hey, I have this, I'm missing this, I'm missing that. I'm gonna put in an email, send it off to Ed, CC you. Hopefully then Ed starts supplying me that information, right? By those dates. And my plan is to essentially have a draft presentation ready by next weekend. Okay, so a couple of days after Christmas. That will then go to the two of you, right? So, if I can get it done before Christmas, great, but I kind of want to keep next weekend, the first couple of days next week for, hey, Dimi finds some issues, he has some questions, he's got to go back to Ed for new information that is missing and all that. So I don't want to commit to, hey, before Christmas, you'll have a draft presentation. I'm thinking it's gonna be after Christmas because I'm gonna be cleaning stuff up over Christmas. So, so then by next weekend, not this coming weekend, but the one after, which is by the 27th, 28th, it would be in you guys' inbox saying, I think this has everything in it. I'm essentially gonna do the same thing as last year and kind of repeat it. So it's still gonna have the discussions in front of, hey, this is what revenue is, this is what that is. I'm gonna keep that in there, right? The yearly reminder is probably not a bad idea. It will go to you guys for review. Hopefully you don't find any finance mistakes in it. Make tweak suggestions. The goal is to kind of audit it for quality. Not necessarily, hey, we should add a slide on this or should add a slide on that. The goal is that feedback then comes from once I send it out to the whole group, right? So the goal for when I send out to you guys is look for mistakes, like, hey, Dimi, that number doesn't match this one, right? So I want a quality numbers in front of the group so that the focus on when I send it out to the whole group, including the select board by 1/5, hopefully closer to 1/3, people can give, hey, I think the presentation would be better if we did this. Maybe we should change the wording here. And so, for example, things I expect to ask from Ed2, every year I have a slide on these are the grants we got. Maybe there's not much, or so I'm still missing information. But essentially, the next week is gathering data to go into it. Then over Christmas, the first couple of days after, get that all in there, get that all polished, get it off to you two for review. Hopefully within 3 days, you can at least send me the feedback. And then by essentially New Year's Eve, I implement that feedback. And then after New Year's, it goes to this whole group and the select board so that they then have all of 5 days to kind of go over and get their slide 2. Please change this word. Slide 3, do you have a typo? Stuff like that. Let's add a slide on this. We're missing this. Do that by the 1/8 discussion.
If there are suggested decreases, which were discussed earlier, when would you want?
1/8.
28th,
The 1/8, January 8th, the next meeting.
not until then.
You can email them around, but they'll go on the agenda on
No, I
1/8.
No, but for your consideration and, is that something that you'd want by, like, right after Christmas, like you're suggesting for the rest of your?
I'm gonna keep track of them. They will go on the agenda for the next budget meeting, which would be January 8th.
Right, you find in the short term, if you find significant errors in the numbers, you can solve adds up.
So I would first go to Ed and you saying, hey, I don't think this is right. You would figure out what it is, right? Just like happened a couple of years ago, if I find, hey, there's this significant error, this 6% is wrong, it's 16. Let's hope this doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
There's gonna be, sorry, but we're having another meeting on December 27th to talk about this,
How come you didn't go yet?
right? Hopefully we don't find those.
I mean Saturday, but I'm taking my stuff.
Does that make
I
sense?
don't ever do anything.
Yeah.
Again, my goal is to get things out sooner. But what I don't want to say, oh, I'll get it to you by the day after Christmas, and then you don't see anything until New Year's. Like, I don't want to do that. I'm good. I make a motion to adjourn.
You run our chart books.
Meeting adjourned.
Here.